In this video, I'll discuss depth cues in some depth, so to speak, and I guarantee there's new information here you don't know. We all know that things get smaller and higher on the page with distance, but what happens when these depth cues conflict with overlapping or with the size of the texture? Which one becomes the dominant depth cue? I'll give you 4 ways to remember this, and you haven't heard this anywhere else. It's in my book, Ellen's Guide to Design Elements, which is $5. I'll quickly review some indicators of depth. So this deer overlaps the trees in back, so the deer must be in front of the trees. As trees go away from us, they get smaller and they also get higher on the page. So that's these two. We see more value and color differences in the foreground than the background, and we see more detail and texture in the foreground than the background. So let's see how these depth cues interact. So this one shows a diminution of size and vertical positioning. These look like they're on the same plane because they're the same size. These look like they're on different planes, and we see the big one as being in front, even though the big one is higher here than the little one, and over here the bigger one is lower than the little one. So when we have a diminution of size, it often trumps the vertical positioning of the object. In the last example, I showed you that a decrease in size showed depth regardless of the vertical positioning. And in this case, vertical positioning is the most important, while size is irrelevant. This pot is the lowest on the page, so it's the closest, whereas this pot is highest on the page, so it's furthest away. It should be much smaller if it were the same as this pot in front. Now I want to compare these pair of squares, these and these. And which ones do you think are further apart from one another? Well, when the dark value is in front and the light one is back, the light one merges with the white background, and so it looks more distant, and this distance between the two shapes seems to be large. However, when the dark one is in back, it contrasts with the background, making it come forward. So this distance seems less than this distance. Now, what if we turn them both upside down? Would we change which one we thought was in front? And the answer, of course, is no. This gray one is in front, even though it's higher than the light one. And this light one is in front, even though it's higher than the dark one. And that's because overlapping trumps vertical positioning. If something overlaps another thing, it is in front regardless of where it is on the paper. Which pair of squares here look further apart from one another? Now that I have a black background instead of a white one from the previous slide, the opposite occurs. So the light colored square contrasts with the background. So these two look relatively close together. However, when the dark square merges with the background, then these two look further apart. Now, if you have a dark line between the two squares, sometimes it's difficult to interpret, especially if they're the same width all the way around. But it seems to indicate more space between these two squares than without this dark line. But what if we make the dark line asymmetric, so this side is a little bigger than this side? Well, now it looks like this square in front is casting a shadow onto the square in back. Now, if the dark value had soft edges, it could still represent a shadow, but it would look like it's some distance away from this one in front, making this distance look greater than this distance. So let's add texture and see how things change. When we look at these two, this one looks like it's in front. Even if it's higher up, it still looks like this one is in front. Now let's overlap them so this one actually is in front. And this makes sense. We have a large texture here and the same type of texture that's just smaller because it's further away. But when we do this, then it's hard to know what's going on. This back texture must actually be bigger than the one in front. So when there are two sizes of the same type of texture, the size of the weave is more important than value differences or vertical positioning. So let's see if we can rank these indicators of depth in terms of which one is more important. Overlapping is more important than any other indicator of depth. What about diminution in size and vertical position? Here, I showed you that diminution in size is more important. This big one is in front of the little one, even though it's higher on the page here and lower on the page over here. So size matters in this case. But in this case, vertical position is more important. This pot is in back because it's higher on the page than this pot, even though this back pot is bigger than the one in front. So in this case, vertical positioning is more important. Now, when there are two sizes of the same type of texture, the size of the weave is more important than value differences and vertical positioning. I also showed you that when there are value differences between the squares, we see more depth. But when the back square merges with the background, then we see more distance from that square to the one in front. So check out my book on Amazon, and please remember to subscribe if you like my channel.